Hello, Internet. My name is David Tolkaz, and today we'll be talking about ChatGPT, um, code creation for artists, and my latest poem called "The Psychology of the Supplement," and a little bit about another poem called. Uh, no, it's not even called anything. It was a one prompt e poetry in ChatGPT. So what I was able to do is construct one prompt, and I didn't test the prompt. It was literally I came up with the prompt. Uh, it wasn't off the top of my head. It was carefully considered and took about 10 minutes to get right, um, which isn't bad because I created an entire poetry out of that. And typically, if I had sat down and crunched the code myself, it could have taken all day, 2 days, maybe even longer. Um, the logic, when you're talking about a language like JavaScript and HTML, you're talking about a language that not only does it's very large, let's just say that, and there's so many different ways to handle the same problem that ChatGPT may come up with a solution that you never even thought of because you didn't know that that was a possibility. So your way of doing something and ChatGPT's way that tend to be quite different. So you'll end up in a position where you're looking at code and you're like, wow, you can do that, and ChatGPT knows how to do that, and so that's you can learn from that. Uh, the biggest issue I think with coding like this is that you need to learn how to code first in order to understand to communicate with ChatGPT in a way that's specific enough for it to come up with the one solution that is your solution for your e-poetry or whatever it is you're trying to do. Um, so with the psychology of the supplement, I couldn't do the same thing that I did with the one prompt e-poetry. I thought that that would be too much in a single. I probably could have come up with a, a prompt and then added it in the data a little at a time. But instead, what I did was I created the data separately. I created however many arrays for the noun phrases, the verbal phrases, and then I created a set of possible phrases that could be that could combine them, and that was these were all arrays. And my contribution to the programming was just to define five or so arrays that had different types of phrases or parts of speech. So by the time ChatGPT enters the fray, I have all the arrays set up already. So I take the arrays, I throw them at ChatGPT. ChatGPT is like, that's great. What do you want me to do with it? So then what do I tell ChatGPT? Well, I say specifically, I would like to make a random poetry generator that combines the various parts of speech using the final array called phrases. So ChatGPT knows that the phrases are going to be what's generating the poetry, and it has these phrases, and I aligned the names so that it would be intuitive for ChatGPT to associate with the arrays. So with VBG specifically, you're talking about a participle or a gerund um, that ends in ing, something like that. Um, with a command, you're talking about a direct command. CMD is a command, so it would be like rejoice in suffering. Why is that like the first thing that pops into my head? I don't know. Maybe there's something wrong with me, and I need to look at that. Either way, this poem is an approach to text generation that employs a template, or actually several templates to produce an unbroken string of phrases um, that create a potential poem. Um, so within this context, there's like however many potential. Actually, it would be infinite because it just keeps going, but it's also finite in that the combinations. There's only so many combinations. It's only infinite because it can keep going. Like a sentence, you could have a sentence that just keeps going forever. So that would be an example of Chomsky's recursion. So language has this potential to be infinite, but it's also finite and limited at the same time. So it's an apparent contradiction, kind of like a fractal that binds infinity in a specific way, but itself is ordered and knowable. So with the so how did ChatGPT respond? Well, it didn't respond perfectly. Um, it created something that I didn't really like. So I said, scrap it. That's not the direction we're going. So ChatGPT says, sure, we'll scrap that. And I say, in response, we need to wrap it in HTML, then randomly generate phrases on a 1-second timer that updates the inner HTML. So we're starting from scratch. The only thing ChatGPT has is my data, which is like 5 arrays of phrases and then possible phrase combinations. So ChatGPT does a little better the second time, but it creates 2 separate files, one HTML and one JavaScript. Now, if I was running off my own web page, that would be perfectly fine. But instead, I'm operating on Blogger, which is not going to let me do that. So I need to combine the 2 files into one file so that I could post it on Blogger. ChatGPT does not have a problem with that. And by that time, we have a file that we can basically edit ourselves now. And what I do, the only change I make is to put it on a 3-second timer as opposed to a 1-second timer. So that's how easy it was for me to create this program. My general suspicion is that it would be very difficult for somebody to code like this unless they had a background in coding by hand, which I do. So I'm able to kind of think about the logic of coding, of the program, and I'm able to feed the logic into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is able to generate working code based on just a logic, just my logic. So do I consider this valuable? I consider this immensely valuable. I consider this a step forward in making programming easier. I still think that if you don't know how to code or you don't understand the logic of coding, ChatGPT would be very difficult for you to work with. So we still need to teach coding in an age of ChatGPT, because you need to understand the logic of programs, and it's incredibly complex, especially something like HTML and JavaScript, which is now working with 2 different languages that control 2 separate scopes and then talk to each other. So we're not dealing with a single language here. We're dealing with 2 different languages, a complex layout that you need to understand how the structure of the code in order to make it work, and that needs to be taught. I think before ChatGPT can be a useful tool for a layperson, they need to understand the structure of the code. How do you do that? Well, right now there are some great resources for those. Like, you can learn how to program in JavaScript and learn how to program in HTML. Using free resources online. You can also pay into these resources. They have little tests that you can go, test your knowledge and see where you're doing well and what you need to improve on. But all those resources are available. They are free. They will teach you the logic of coding. By the time you've put a week into it, you'll be able to communicate with ChatGPT well enough to do simple e-poetries. Most of my e-poetries are very simple, with the exception of the n-gram generator, which is, I wouldn't say it's complex necessarily, but you need to it's different from an e-poetry that just puts text on the screen. Let's say that. Um, so yeah, this is more about teaching how to make ChatGPT work for artists than it is about anything else. I've always thought it was a best practice to be transparent about your process. I don't withhold or hang on to technique. By the time like I'm in a position where I'm explaining it, I'm probably usually already bored with it, and I'm on to the next thing. So it's not something that I would necessarily want to hang on to. I don't. I you know I conceive of myself as a kind of a teacher. So that's this is just me, you know, performing that self-conception in a way that I think is beneficial to other people. Thank you for your time. I hope this was interesting, perhaps valuable to your process of creation. Um, it's not going to replace knowledge of programming, not yet. At least there may be a time when it does, but right now we haven't reached that point because you're still communicating with a machine, so you need to be able to do that effectively. And in order to do that effectively, you have to know how the structure and logic of programming. So, thank you for your time again, and I'll update. I'm sure I'm going to update. So I'll see you soon.